Housing crisis on the way. Investors from Asia buy up Vancouver. BC builders feeling pinch of dwindling land supply. City buyers gets units before Hong Kong. All these sound familiar, but guess what? They're actually from 30 years ago. So we've been going over the same cycle from 1989. That's when these articles are from. Housing crisis on the way. You always have that group of people who are expecting the market to crash without giving proper reason for that belief. Just saying that, hey, prices went up too much, so it's gonna crash, doesn't justify anything. There's always got to be some kind of economic factors. And as far as we see it, if there's some kind of major immigration policy change, that will have a heavy effect. And our banking system is obviously pretty strict as it is. But if there's more tightening for that, then that will have an effect over the long run. Until then, the economic factors, even considering all these new rule changes and the taxes that the NDP did introduce, haven't really made a dent in the market. Prices are still stable. Sales, yes, they've gone down, but have prices? No. So affordability, 30 years ago, it was an issue. Today, it's still an issue. And the fact that nothing has been done about it over that period, that's the concern. So even if somebody decided to do some trial and error, you have 30 years to figure this out. So like we always say, you got the border, the water, and the mountains. So very limited land supply that we have here. Population's growing, there's people coming from abroad settling here or setting this up as a plan B for their future or for their kids or next generation or whatnot. So the more people you have coming here, simple economics, demand goes up, supply is still kind of the same, and therefore prices, they'll get pushed up. Here, especially in Vancouver, I mean, you gotta tear down something old to build something new. And that's a pretty unique situation that we're in here. So that's why we differ from, let's say, Toronto or whatnot. They have a huge land masses, they could keep expanding to the side. Only way we have to go is to the east. Now, investors from Asia buy up Vancouver. 30 years ago, this was the headline. But even now, foreign investors are being displayed like they're coming in and just buying everything. But as far as we see it, they have some kind of ties to Canada or BC or Vancouver or whatever it is that they're putting their money. Either their kids are coming here, going to school, or they're kind of planning to make the move to come and live here. It's very rare that somebody will just park their money in a place that they have no ties to, no family or no siblings or whatnot. So some of these taxes that were introduced only affect a small number of people. Majority of them get exempt from it. So it's not always necessary that it's foreigners that are buying it. There's a lot of local money sitting here too, especially with the boom that happened. There's a lot of downsizers and there's a lot of people moving out of Vancouver, buying two places, let's say in the Fraser Valley. They're absorbing some of the supply there. And like I always say, it's always a supply issue. I mean, yeah, they're building more density now, as you see on like the Cambie corridor or whatnot, but could it have been done earlier? Or even now that it is being done, should we have built more than 6-story buildings? It might have been a good idea, right? Some of the pockets, I mean, you go all the way up to Broadway, you got mid-rises, and then you work your way backwards to Marine Drive. Marine Drive has high-rises, and in between, all you have is a bunch of low-rises. I mean, some pockets you're gonna have to designate to building vertical. That's kind of the only way that the city can go. And those are the segments that the market can actually afford. Some of the condos, you know, single family homes, almost 1.6 million. It's not for everybody. But building vertical, definitely the way to go, especially with the restriction that we do see on the land here. And BC builders feeling pinch of dwindling land supply. Now think about that. This was 30 years ago. Let's not forget that. So 30 years ago, developers were thinking that, hey, we're running out of land and it's hard for us to develop. 30 years ago. The demand or the supply, it's only been absorbed to a greater extent over the 30 years. Land's been consumed more and more. So now if you look at it, 30 years ago, prices weren't affected. And now with more development, more immigration, more jobs, why would they, from an economic standpoint, decrease now? Yeah, there is a land restriction, and that's why you see the city is changing some of the zonings, introducing new NCPs and whatnot. But I feel we're still in a spot where we're playing catch up and we're still not thinking ahead to where we need to be. By the time they figure out that, hey, here's the plan, this is kind of the density level that we're going to go with, that's according to today. By the time everything goes through, everything starts getting built, we've outpaced ourselves. So one of the biggest ideas for stabilizing land prices is actually investment in infrastructure, which we have a major lack of. Well, let's say we connect all the way out to, for example, Abbotsford. Connect that to Vancouver via some kind of high-speed rail, bullet train, whatever the case may be. And if somebody knows I could just hop on a train 20, 30 minutes later, I could get to Vancouver or wherever it is that I need to work somewhere along the line, then that can push development all the way that way to the east. And it'll develop that center first before development starts getting pushed back down to the Fraser Valley side. And once it hits that, that's when prices will start rising again. But in the meantime, it gives it time for the demand and supply to kind of reach an equilibrium. So things like that are actually what need to be done. And yeah, that is a longer term strategy. I mean, they announced $7 billion for affordable housing over the next 10 years. I mean, yeah, great, everybody should get a home, but there's got to be some kind of structure behind it. You know, prices are still going up. Prices for March were higher than February in Greater Vancouver. You know, so that kind of goes to show that even though sales were so slow, prices are still stable. And once again, it's hard to gauge how much demand there actually is in the market. So how do you control something that you have no idea as to how big it actually is? So demand and supply, simple economics. As long as we still have that pinch for land and we're not building vertical enough, prices, they'll be out where they're at. Now they tried getting local buyers access before people from Hong Kong got access. So when we heard last year that they were trying out the whole 30-day period where pre-sales had to be marketed locally and then to a greater area, and then after that you could go out to the foreign buyers in different markets that you could advertise to. It's not new. It's been done back then as well. I mean, if a place like BC, Vancouver especially, with all the amenities and the access and the geographical location, it's prime. So trying to artificially manipulate a market isn't always the best idea. Yes, affordability should be there, but have a proper plan in place for that. And I always say the simplest thing to start out with is the city hall processes, whether it's Vancouver, Surrey, or elsewhere, plans can be pushed through a lot quicker than what they are right now. I mean, all that supply sitting there could be on the market, absorbing some of the demand there and kind of leveling off prices for X amount of time. And it would encourage developers to kind of build a little bit more as well, so making that supply more readily available. From a developer's perspective, if they can complete a project start to finish in a year in a different city than they can in Vancouver, well, that's where they're going to end up. So streamlining some of these processes, the quickest way to do it, long-term process, have proper infrastructure in place, connect the communities a lot better, so even if people are living a bit away from where they are working, they should have the means of transportation of getting there quickly and efficiently. So the transportation system obviously has to save them either time or money for them to use it. So in short, we see the market being stable where it is over the next couple months as people get used to all the changes, especially with the banking regulations, and that kind of time frame will be pretty stable. After that, you'll see it kind of resuming to normal. I mean, we're still at where the market was before the whole boom happened as far as the number of sales go. So we'll keep an eye out for any kind of changes that might affect the market, but as of now, the economics does make sense. Prices are strong, so if somebody is looking to get into the market, it's a good time. A good time in the sense that there's some good deals out there to be had, since a lot of people are worried that, hey, prices are going to drop, and there's a lot of investors sitting on the sideline as well. So sometimes it's a good idea to take advantage of that to get that good piece of parcel that you might have your eye on. But other than that, if anything else comes up, we'll definitely keep you updated.